So, old James Dwyer, who had done his apprenticeship of all places up in Belmullet, and he found his wife up in Belmullet. So there is a connection between the Dwyers and Belmullet way above in Mayo. So, and the first bank was just inside the door there on the left hand side. It was the provincial bank in Tipperary. It came out here about 1909, 1910. And they talk about the horses escorting out the money when it was brought out, because you had to come through a place like Ula and maybe a palace where maybe the money wasn't safe. There was a story told about how the money had to be predicted coming and going. But you see, the bank is beginning to tell you again that the story's changed, because you're now hearing of cheques for the first time. And in the Kerry ledgers now people are actually coming in and paying by cheque. And that's a big, huge change. They're not having cash. Cash is still out there, obviously, but now they're using cheque. The place is getting better off, and people are getting better off, and so on. And the bank was there then for about 10 or 12 years before they moved down to the end of the village and built a brand new premises down there. And of course, then it was called the Munster Leinster Bank, which later became the Allied Irish Bank, and then unfortunately closed a couple of years ago. But the first bank was here. And not alone was the first bank here, but it actually spread out from here, and it had sub-offices all over the place. So the bank was here, there was a sub-office in Capmore, there was a sub-office in Kilcommon, there was a sub-office in Capawhite. So this was kind of it was the town, was a centre. And when we were growing up, that added to the richness of the village, of the town, because you had bank clerks staying here. Things that are no longer in anyone else's kind of psychic. We grew up with a lot of young bank clerks in the village. We grew up with a lot of young teachers who lived here. Now people communicate. Come out here from town as well. There's around 60 teachers down in the new secondary school. I gather there's only 1 or 2 from the parish. Whereas if you went back, say, 50 odd years ago, you actually had to live here. You didn't have the communication. So bank clerks and bank managers no longer live here because we no longer have a bank. So this was the wires, there was a hardware here, and there was a drapery. And in 1911, he was employing three tailors here. So just think about it, 3 tailors alone was employed. We're not talking about the seamstress or outdoors and all that. So this was the Wires, and James O'Dwyer was his name, and those of you do remember Jimmy the Wire in Campo called after James O'Dwyer. This is where they came out of. That was an extension put on then, and I have another photograph. One of those photographs unfortunately has to be brought back to me. And it shows a very interesting shot because it shows you Hibernian House. Hibernian House was the name of an Irish organisation that originated in America and came back into Ireland. It was sort of to develop Irish activities, and it was founded in America and then reintroduced back into Ireland, and that was Hibernian House. We also had a hall in Doon called Ancient Order of Hibernians Hall, or called the AOH. So when I mentioned about the Crystal Ballroom, I mentioned about the McGinnises for the operas. So on a given night in the winter time, you could have gone to the student prince in the convent. You could have gone to a show down here in the Crystal Ballroom, or you could have gone to the AOH Hall as well, and you could have done your woodwork, because you used to actually have woodwork classes down there. And the AOH Hall, which we'll talk about later on, we go back down there, was originally a primary school. There was a primary school down there, and the last teacher down there was a man called Griffin. So at one stage there was actually a little primary school down there before the coming of the CPS, before the coming of the convent. There was actually 4 or 5 primary schools, head schools in the parish in the 1830s. In actual fact, in the 1830s, what looked like the developing town wasn't here at all. It was probably more likely down where we call the Toher Cross Roads. If you go down the road about 1.5 kilometres, there's a spot there called the Toher Cross Roads. There was a schoolhouse down there, and in the 1850s, 1860s, there was a substantial number of buildings there. And if you look at the maps at the time, it appears as if that might have been the settlement rather than here. But White's was the catalyst. And then later on, the convent, and later on the brothers were the catalysts that kind of developed this little town, and then the commercial life came in around it. But for a short time, it could have been more down to the Toher Cross Roads, and that in itself is another story. Now, let's go another little bit. Let's focus.